Isaiah Likely has been involved in two major plays over the last 2 weeks that have not gone in the Ravens' favor. And a former Baltimore Ravens tight end weighed in on the situation. We talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. And Locked On Podcast Network's now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens content and coverage for you here on Locked On Ravens. And jam-packed episode today is Dennis Pitta did not hold back on Isaiah Likely and his thoughts on the couple of plays that he has had over the last few weeks that, of course, have not gone in the Ravens' favor. We'll talk about that. Then we'll also talk about the Ravens sending a message, or maybe like 5 of them, with their signing of Laken Tomlinson. We'll have to pick and figure out which one they actually sent. And then finally, we'll do some news and notes. We'll kind of close the chapter on the Pittsburgh game from last week and open up a fresh one, hopefully, for that Cincinnati game that's coming up on Sunday. I want to tell everyone today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. With us today, it is former Ravens receiver and Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail. And Q, unfortunate last couple of weeks for the Ravens. You think they're on that win streak. They finally turned a corner, but we knew the test they had coming up with those AFC North divisional games with Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. And, for different reasons in both games, the Ravens failed those tests and now have a pretty uphill climb if they want to make the postseason.
Yeah, you went from controlling your own destiny the whole way of getting back to above 500 to now being below 500, and kind of weird space with the rest of the season. You have Pittsburgh again, you have Cincinnati again, but sandwiched in between there, you got two teams that are vying for playoffs, one in the NFC and the Packers, and one who is vying for the #1 seed in the AFC and the Patriots. Obviously, them and Denver are kind of battling it out back and forth, but bigger picture wise, it's really been a disappointment, I think, for this year in general. And it's pretty much the same things you and I have been saying the entire season. We start off with a huge level of optimism of guys going to really increase their performances. We were cautiously optimistic about what some of the moves EDC made, but now that the season is in week 14, I mean, again, we said it earlier in the season when they were 1-5. We're going to say it now when it's week 14. You are what your record says you are. You're a below average football team, and you have below average talent on said football team. And here we are talking about it.
Yeah, especially at certain positions. And we outlined before the season, Q, and we talked about how strong this roster looked. And then we also made the disclaimer that was but look, we know that there are weaknesses in these certain areas. And if those weaknesses pop up, a la the guard spots, a la the pass rush, it could really have an impact on their year. And that, factoring in with the injuries and everything else that's going on, it's made for a pretty disappointing season. And obviously, with these two games they've played in the last 2 weeks, obviously the Bengals on Thanksgiving and then the Steelers this past Sunday, you're right with the opportunity to control your destiny just goes right out the window. And now you're kind of back to not where you started, but you're back to that, you're on your back foot and you have to rely on other help to be able to achieve that goal of getting to the postseason. And then there's the question of if they get there, how far are they even going to go at this rate? But a couple of the plays that were big determining factors, and I think how each of those games went, both involved Isaiah Likely. Obviously, the fumble right before the end zone in the Cincinnati game, followed by the touchdown that wasn't a touchdown that was called on the field in Pittsburgh. And former Ravens tight end Dennis Pitta, he was on 98 Rock and talking about it. And there was a video that was put out of him through 98 Rock Baltimore. And he weighed in on the situation. And he said that he is actually going to put some blame on Isaiah Likely. Because I think there have been conversations about, particularly in that Pittsburgh situation, how okay, he was making the move and extending the ball. And what else could he have done? But Dennis Pitta is going to put some blame on him here. So what Dennis Pitta said is, quote, "I'm going to put some blame on Isaiah Likely. and they were talking about, I guess, the Kansas City situation last year. And he said, you talked about the KC thing, and I agree. He was trying to make a play. His toe came down out of bounds. There's nothing he can do about that. Last week was an issue. He was nonchalant with the football, trying to reach it across for no reason. His whole body was going to finish in the end zone regardless. A completely unnecessary play. So I'm going to stop it there right now. I just want to talk about last week before we head into this week and the whole controversial thing that happened in Pittsburgh. We've talked about it, you and I. It's a play that happened a couple weeks ago at this point, so it's kind of in the past. But hearing Dennis Pitta say that and essentially saying like there was no need to extend the football, no need to kind of swim around and kind of go in there and put the ball at risk because his momentum was carrying him forward into the end zone. I mean, do you agree with what Dennis Pitta says there about how that was completely on Isaiah Likely? There was no reason for that. How it was a good play by the defender, but the defender shouldn't have even had the opportunity to make it. Is that kind of where you are on that?
It's interesting that he brought that up the way he brought it up. I think for DP, he has had an amazing career. I think that part of his catches, obviously I covered, him when I was with the Ravens radio network and we did all their games. And Dennis was a strong catcher of the football, no question. He had a flair for when the ball was a low ball to kind of slide into it to make the catch if it was out in front of him. Didn't really have as great of a body control per se as we saw with Isaiah Likely. But I think it's fair what he's saying about Isaiah and the way Isaiah was in his terms nonchalant. I think what I've seen from Isaiah, all the times that I've been out there at the Under Armour Performance Center, seen him in all the different practice scenarios that were open up to the media and all that, plus his games. He is an extremely gifted talent, strong hands, great body awareness. But yes, I agree with Dennis in that he has a laissez-faire flow to him. And that can get him in trouble at times. I think when you look at, for example, Mark doesn't play. What I mean by Mark doesn't play, he really gets after it and tries to pay attention to the details, the run after catch every time there's an opportunity to catch the ball, taking it upfield very aggressively. Other times where, it's tuck it and go and all of the details behind, trying to be a successful player and good creature of habits. Isaiah doesn't quite do that on a regular, and that's just the reality of what I have observed. And I think it has come back to haunt him when you look at the plays that he could have, would have, should have, but didn't make. And that's where I think Dennis is saying, yeah, he kind of got casual. In other words, I think Isaiah could have, as I'm thinking about it with what Dennis is saying, I mean, snatch that ball, boom, fall down, roll to the ground, securing a catch, knowing the guy's behind you, and kind of get up, spike it in his eye, and jog off the sideline. Instead, you kind of like, yeah, just a flair for the dramatic, and kind of say lazy with it, but just, stylistically, I wanted to catch it this way. And stylistically, it came back to haunt him and what he could have, would have, should have done.
And over the years, I've used the term loosey-goosey. That's what I've said. He's been loosey-goosey with the football. And it's not the first time, where he'll kind of run with it outwards or, like almost like hold it out sometimes and like try to make a move there. And he's not the only one on the team that does that. But, when it comes back to haunt you in a big moment like that, it's really tough. And so Dennis then continued to move on and talk about this past week with the end zone play that was a touchdown but wasn't. And he said, quote, if you go back in this game to Isaiah Likely's first touchdown and you watch what he did when he caught that football, he caught it and then immediately protected it. And he kind of went like this. And he said, and there wasn't anybody around him, but he thought maybe there might be some hands that shot through late. And so you see him in an urgent situation, catching the ball and protecting it. Now, in this particular play, Pitta says he reached out, caught it. He could have done the same thing. He said he's watched it 100 times now. He said he could have easily caught it and immediately clutched it and had an additional security against his chest with both hands before the defender's hands came around his body to try to knock the ball out. So, Q, you being a former receiver, you having been in moments where you have to secure the football. You have to make sure defenders don't come and poke that thing out where, he didn't catch the ball extended out. Obviously, he caught the ball and then extended the football out. And he was already kind of extended, but the motion of extending the football happened before the 2 steps. And, now there's this whole thing about the 3rd step and whatnot. But, that extra layer of security, Isaiah, according to Dennis here, he didn't practice that the 2nd time around when he did it the 1st time around. So for you having been in those moments and having to, make sure the ball is not poked out by defenders or they can make those plays, I mean, what are you taught in those situations? And, how do you think Isaiah handled it? Because I know that some people are saying like, look, this good play by the defender wasn't Likely's fault, while others, and even John Harbaugh, is like, no, that's not how you want the ball, caught in those situations.
I've been in those situations. Dennis has been in those situations. John has coached so many players that, including Dennis, that has been in those situations. And you do have to have a sense of urgency. You do have to think of the worst case scenario and guard against it. That's being a professional. That's understanding the moment. When you have that great body awareness, and certainly Isaiah Likely does. I mean, dude, he balling out, and whether or not the Ravens re-sign him back, who cares? He's going to play somewhere because he's extremely talented. I mean, that's just the bottom line. But to miss on a perfect opportunity like he had, it's going to stick with you. And I think that to secure the catch, that would have been a game changer. That certainly, oh boy. I mean, that plus you take away the Travis Jones gaffe by the officiating crew, and now you're looking at the Ravens winning the game. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, but the attention to detail, like teachable moment wise, you got a couple games left as a Baltimore Raven before you hit free agency. Let this be a teachable moment and let it motivate the hell out of you to play better.
Yeah, and you can see so he catches the ball and then he has the opportunity to either tuck it in or extend it out. And so it was bang bang. And essentially he had decided like catch and then extend out away from the defender instead of catch and then tuck in and I guess fall to the ground with that ball or come down and just kind of lower the shoulder to the ground, make sure you
shield the ball away from the defender is basically what he could have done in that instance. By shielding the ball away from the defender, it gives you a chance to, if his momentum hits you, you're between him and the ball, and he's trying to swipe at it wherever. And now you can even roll to the ground and take homeboy for a ride, get back up, and like I said, spike it in his eye. Crowd would have gone nuts, and he would have been in Raven lore.
Yeah, and again, just for reference, John Harbaugh was asked by Cordell Woodland, who's a friend of the show, does a great job. And he was asked by Cordell on that Likely play, were you fine with how he caught it? Is that how you want guys to catch the ball in that situation? And John Harbaugh just said, no, that is not how they want him to catch the football. So clearly, you want to do that shielding like Pitta was talking about. And obviously that's probably what they're teaching in the building or they want to get across. And that did not happen in this situation. And so for Likely, it is a teachable moment. It's him having to learn that. It's just back-to-back weeks of plays like that are in big moments that either swing momentum plays in the game or whatnot. And even still, whether this one should be a catch or shouldn't have been a catch, that's not the conversation we're having. It's the conversation about like how he should have actually caught the football in Dennis Pitta's eyes, in Q's eyes, and in Harbaugh's eyes. Like, current, former, whoever it may be, like people who have been around the game, feels like that's not the consensus. Hey, you should catch the football. So we're going to have to see, whether there's a change with Isaiah. Maybe there's another situation like that and we'll see him tuck that ball in instead of extend the ball out. But 2 unfortunate plays that unfortunately go against Isaiah Likely. Coming up, though, the Ravens did sign a former Pro Bowl offensive lineman yesterday, and we'll talk about what message they're actually sending with that because there could be like 5 different ones. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Mint Mobile. There's no reason to let big wireless drain your wallet, especially during the holidays. Right now, Mint Mobile's running their best deal of the year. All of their unlimited plans are 50% off That means you can lock in 3, 6, or even 12 months of unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. It's the easiest way to take your overpriced phone bill and give it the full Scrooge treatment. And what makes this even better is how simple Mint makes the switch. No contracts, no nonsense, just real savings and real quality service. Now, switching to Mint lets you keep your same coverage for a lower price, and setup takes only a few minutes. You can bring your own phone and number without any issues. Turn your expensive wireless present to a huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint. Shop Mint unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. Limited time offer, upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Plan required, $15 a month equivalent. Taxes and fees. Initial plan term only. Greater than 35 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. Back here, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Kadri Ismail still talking here. Ravens football 5 days per week. We have the regular show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We have watch-alongs. We have bonus episodes. We have instant reaction shows. The squad show, which will be tonight, by the way, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Q and I will be on that alongside Sam and Joku. So be sure you check that out as well. Plus, the network just launched the Everydayer Club. So there's additional add-on content if you want to support the show a little bit more. That link's in the description down below. But nothing's changing with the way we're doing things on Locked On Ravens. Still free and available for you, all of our content. But Q, the Ravens made an addition on the O-line. Look at this. It only took 14 weeks for them to do it. And after a year of struggle on this offensive line, particularly at the guard spots, Laken Tomlinson comes in. Now, Tomlinson was released, I believe it was last week, by Houston. Yeah. Started 7 games for them this season and wasn't great, if we're being honest here. So they signed him to the practice squad. They released Carl Lawson, and we'll get into that situation a little bit later because that whole thing was just another weird one for this organization. But yeah. Tomlinson, according to PFF, just for context, I know some people love PFF, other people don't, but just for context, Tomlinson, 51st among 79 qualifying guards. He got benched, which obviously was why he and the Texans decided to part ways, and was actually pretty solid for Seattle last season. All things considered, he was a Pro Bowler back in 2021 with the 49ers. He's 33 years old right now, about to turn 34 in a couple of months. There are a lot of ways this could go, Q, in terms of messaging the Ravens are sending here. It could be a message of, hey, Ben Cleveland just got suspended for 3 games. We need a body at the guard spot. He's a veteran, so makes sense. It also could be he's a veteran, and we trust veterans because they do more than younger players, and maybe this is a guy you can get up to speed for a week or 2 and then throw him in the lineup. I don't know about that, but we'll see. Tomlinson primarily is a left guard. That's what he's played over the majority of his career. So, I mean, maybe you're looking at Voorhees instead of Falele. Maybe they want to put Tomlinson at left guard and try Emory Jones out at right guard and really like stick him there, because I know they don't want to do like the whole left guard, right guard, moving him around all the way around there. Maybe that's what they do. They could move Tomlinson to right guard and want to flip Emory Jones to left guard or reduce rotations. Like, there are so many different messages. I think there's a clear one that like this means something for the Ravens, but how much it means, I think that's the conversation everyone's talking about right now.
Yeah, you know what, I posted up, oh, wow, finally, hey, we got yourselves a new offensive lineman, and bruh, the honest guy doesn't lie, and nowadays, the more educated fan, they're going to go search him out. They search him out. And I'm like, good God, man, this dude is just as bad as Daniel Falele. Like, he has the one play where he's getting bench pressed by the D lineman, and that play's gone viral on the internet. So I think bigger picture wise, it looks like it's just Ben Cleveland being 3-game suspension. We just need a body to kind of get through practice in the meantime. Okay. And that's that. What else are we going to say? Like, just the disappointment of having this guy and this guy being just a jag. Like, man, yeah, you started all those games and jagged it up. Like, you had your opportunity and, okay. Meanwhile, in Houston, they're getting better and looking good and whooping up on teams. And meanwhile, here in Baltimore, here we are.
Well, speaking of Carl Lawson, actually, he responded to his release from the Ravens. And so there, Ramy on Twitter, shout out to Ramy. He said when Carl Lawson was released, Carl Lawson genuinely had to be putting out some of the worst practices known to man, because everyone's like, why isn't he playing? What's the deal here with Carl Lawson? And Carl Lawson responded to that after his release and said, nope, not at all. Quite the opposite. Some of the best, actually. Organization needed to do what was best for them. Roster dynamics, still a great place. Thankful for the opportunity. So cool little message there from Carl Lawson on his way out of Baltimore. Still a very weird situation with everything that happened with him. Again, like the messaging essentially to me, at least what it felt like was Carl Lawson turned down opportunities and was waiting for the right opportunity to find a place where he could play and get possibly called up to the active roster and make an impact, and only really got into one game with the team. And you're kind of wondering, like every week, John Harbaugh, I mean, especially like when he was asked about Lawson, like maybe a month ago, he's like, yeah, like looking good, ready to go essentially. And then just was never called up outside of that one contest. Maybe something with Draymond Jones had to do with that, Q, where they signed him and they brought in Draymond Jones and like they didn't have the opportunity to play him. But again, like you're playing David Ajabo every week, or at least most weeks. So you're like, all right, what's going on with that? And, it's kind of eerily similar to CJ Gardner-Johnson, where they signed him and then 2 hours later traded for Alohi Gilman. And I'm sure CJ Gardner-Johnson was like, didn't we just like have a conversation about something? And I trade him for another guy who's going to take snaps away from me. So I don't know what the deal was. Again, Carl Lawson at the very least here taking the high road. And I thought, again, like him calling the Ravens a great place, thankful for the opportunity, like really cool there. But, he feels like he was doing well in practice and, it doesn't feel like he's holding anything against them, which is good. And I think that's a really cool approach for Carl Lawson to take here, but still doesn't kind of take away the weirdness of another situation here for the Ravens.
Yeah, it doesn't. And that's why I think, the bigger picture is what are we doing? I think, oh my goodness, the way in which, as I look at all the games in my mind and it's just going through it, and it's like you feel like you're wasting your talent on this squad. Like the AFC is ripe for the picking. You have young quarterbacks that are doing their thing, Bo Nix, and of course Drake May. And so if Drake May is doing his thing and Bo Nix is doing his thing, you kind of got Josh Allen, he's had an up and down year, but clearly when they played against the Bengals, they were balling. Heck, even, you look at Joe Burrow. Joe came back from injury. He's slinging it even in the winter time of the freezing cold tundra up there in Buffalo, New York. My goodness, like again, this AFC championship game, I mean, that's ripe for the picking, and you blew it. As an organization, you had your opportunities to get guys in and build up this roster so it could be durable, and you failed it. And now here we are. We're talking about practice. A guy that's going to come in, and as I'm looking at these highlights, is just mother of pearl. Laken Tomlinson, boy, woo, he gets bench pressed, it seems like every other time. So I think he's just a body. I think that unfortunately, here we are. 7 games as a starter, good for you. But we needed more, and we didn't get more from EDC and company.
Yeah, it is a too little too late proposition for me on the offensive line situation. And for an edge signing, I was pretty excited about and just seeing what he could do, winning one-on-one reps and whatnot, which is something the Ravens needed. Just kind of felt like he never really got an opportunity. And again, like we know the Ravens are like they put emphasis on the practices. We know that. I mean, Ben Cleveland is example like number 1, 2, 3, and 4 when it comes to that in terms of some of the opportunities that people, oh, where's Ben Cleveland? And then it's obviously the practice thing, and he's now gone for the next 3 games anyway, but it's not like he was going to play for him. So feels like it is just a depth signing. I think that's probably the message here. So I'm not putting too much stock into it. But at the same time, I mean, with Tavius Robinson coming back and Ben Cleveland, I guess, going for the next 3, it's just like Carl Lawson said, a little bit of roster dynamics there overall. But even still, this should have happened in the offseason. Maybe very worst case scenario trade deadline, but we know how difficult it is for O-linemen to get traded during the deadline with how much is needed there. So overall, you're in a tough situation and you're going to need a heck of a run to even make this postseason dance. And coming up, Q and I will talk about that. We'll put a bow on the Pittsburgh game, look ahead to Cincinnati, and a lot more coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump in the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up, and you can bet next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. For that Ravens and Steelers game in week number 14, if you had Isaiah Likely touchdown for the first one, not the second one that wasn't called a touchdown, that was good. Isaiah Likely with his score. And then on the Steelers side, maybe you had Jaylen Warren for an anytime touchdown. That would have been good as well. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Moving along, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Kadri Ismail still here with you, rocking out, talking Ravens football here. Let's wrap up the Pittsburgh game. Let's put a bow on that one. A lot of different conversations. Obviously, the NFL told Harbaugh, and Harbaugh announced that they got the play wrong for Travis Jones, and that cost the Ravens 4 points. Obviously, 4 points is pretty big in a 5-point loss. So just, with that and the likely catch, not catch, and the Aaron Rodgers interception / down, like, a lot of weird calls there, but the Ravens, again, just didn't play well enough. They allowed Aaron Rodgers to sit back there in the pocket, no sacks for the defense on Rodgers. And, offensively, after driving down the field and getting the field goal, just, slow start for them. And they just too little too late in the second half. I mean, what was your biggest issue with that Pittsburgh game in terms of why Baltimore wasn't able to pull out the win?
Again, it's the same thing that we've been talking about for forever. When you need to make a play on the defensive side of the ball, what do? You give up a big play. What was the weakness of Aaron Rodgers and company? That they couldn't throw the football down the football field. They hadn't had but one play that was over 30 yards the entire season. So week 13, they finally hit like 2 or 3. Marlon, pushed off or not pushed off. He was in phase and he's not in phase. And boom, here goes the catch. When you look at the way in which they needed to get off the field, they weren't able to get off the field. The referees, they go ahead, and the officiating crew wants to stick their neck into it on the special team side of the ball, on the offensive side of the ball with no calls, and then on the defense side of the ball with no calls as well. Because that was a turnover, and Buchanan should have had that ball as a souvenir. Instead, he's sitting there after the play trying to get the ball, and the offensive lineman for the Pittsburgh Steelers like, "Nah, you ain't having it." Which then you look at the replay officials, they're like, "Nah, we confirmed that his knee was down," which is okay, but his knee was down, but it wasn't really fully grasped yet. Isaiah's wasn't a catch. And somehow the week before, Zay Flowers pushed off, but he really didn't. But then speaking of Zay Flowers, when are we going to have some level of consistency? And what I mean by consistency, like, bruh, like he had an opportunity to toe tap the sideline and the entire foot was out of bounds, which is just egregious. And Bateman, I am giving him a pass to a degree because Lamar was forced up out of the pocket with a pirouette trying to get it to him. I think Lamar could have thrown a better ball, but I give Lamar grace in that he's running for his life because Fa'alele was Ole. And so the timing is way off. You got to make these miraculous catches all the freaking time. And it's just not fair to anybody. So it's the usual suspects. It's the usual same thing that we keep going over week in and week out. We're tired of it as a fan base. I'm sure the players got to be tired of it too, but you got to own it.
We talk about trends over the course of a month or so of the year, and you're like, all right, these are things you have to fix. And some of those things, just like with the pass rush, they fixed that for a little bit. But now it kind of is back to what it was. The offensive line has been consistent all season in terms of it being poor, and obviously other things that we've talked about as well. But now, Q, you got to look at it. Cincinnati, obviously, T. Higgins is back in concussion protocol, so he might miss this game again against Baltimore. Trey Hendrickson out for the season after he underwent core muscle surgery, so Ravens don't have to worry about him. But we know Joe Burrow is going to play. We know Jamar Chase is going to play, and we know the Bengals essentially are going to be eliminated from the postseason completely if they lose this game to Baltimore. Even if they win out, they're still going to have like a 20 or 30% chance to make. So their season right now is hanging on by a thread, more so than Baltimore's is. But I believe Cincinnati's still going to be motivated. These guys are going to try to win this football game. Baltimore needs this game in the worst way, but so does Cincinnati. So what are you looking ahead to? And I mean, it's kind of probably the same stuff we just talked about in the Pittsburgh game, but a lot of that stuff has to shift, especially because that Bengals defense, despite the fact that before the Buffalo game, they were playing a little better coming out of their bye week, that still defense is on track to be one of the worst in NFL history, and you can't allow them to do what they did in Baltimore.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. We seem to be a team that likes to help other teams feel good about themselves. Worst team defensively in Bengals / NFL history, we make them look like world beaters. The worst rushing team performance by a Steelers team in a mighty long time. We outgained them on the ground, yet we still lose. It's just madness how you see it, and it just continues to snowball and spiral out of control.
Yeah, it's really tough right now, and it's really exhausting to watch this team every week, knowing that, going into a game, the same issues are going to pop up over and over again, and almost feels like there's no hope for them to improve, and you have to just kind of bank on either Lamar Jackson playing Superman, but he hasn't really been able to do that over the last month of the season. While he was better against the Steelers, still, it was a pretty low bar that he had to clear over the last 3 weeks, and a lot of that with the injuries and the O-line play and, receivers dropping passes, and he himself missed some throws as well. Like, this whole unit, and then you're asking the defense to just kind of hold on. And then, they can't do that for the entire game. You're going to have to put up some points yourself. And while I thought they found something in the second half, both defensively and offensively, you got to go back to what you saw in the second half for the most part against the Steelers, because these slow starts just cannot keep happening the way that they are. But Q, that's all I have for you. Thanks so much for hopping on the show. Before I get you out of here, tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, missiletraining.com is where you can find me. What am I working on? Human movement and sports performance training. Human movement doesn't matter the age, from 6 years old all the way on up to my oldest client. He is 85 and doing extremely well. Human movement and sports performance training, team training, individual training, doesn't matter the sport. I've got a slew of baseball guys in currently, as well as a collegiate rugby player and a professional squash player, to name a few on my roster, a couple of collegiate rosters of players that are in. And if you want to come in during your winter break, come on in and we'll get in some work and help you out. That being said, missiletraining.com is where you can find me. Come talk to me. We'll figure out how to help you be the best version of a durable, more consistent player in your sport and or in your life. Of course, WJZ, you can find me on Purple Pregame each and every week right before the Ravens kick off. And of course, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and I, we break it all down right here each and every week, except for when he talks about story picks, which we won't get into because it's the regular season and he's banned from talking about it. But off season, Kevin is on his game, and you got to check us out. We be checking it out as far as all the nuances of all things Ravens. And then the squad show, Sam and Joku, Kevin Oestreicher and I, we give it to you once a week, and then we follow it back up post game. Sunday Night Football, doesn't matter. 1:00 game, doesn't matter. Monday Night Football, doesn't matter. We stay up, we break it down, let you interact with us.
Hey, you should be proud of me. I've been saying they need to stop all that compensatory pick stuff. So I've been going on that path. But yes, once the offseason comes, we'll dive into all the things the Ravens need to do. But we still got 4 games to play here for this Baltimore Ravens team at least. So we'll be covering it all here on Locked On Ravens. Be sure to go support Q and everything he has going on. Links will be in the description down below. So thank you again, Q, for hopping on. And thank you to everybody who watched and listened today to Locked On Ravens. On the way out, be sure to like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more daily Ravens coverage and content. Turn notifications on so you know when our content comes out as well. So stay tuned, and we'll see you right back here later tonight for the squad show, as well as tomorrow for the regular show on Locked On Ravens.